Hello again team, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin and welcome back for another video. Today we are setting up for December in my bullet journal, and honestly I cannot believe that we're already at this point in the year. The last couple of months seem to have flown by, as they do every year honestly, but enough dwelling on that. Before we get into setting up December, let's have a look at how November was coming together. From my last monthly plan with me video, you'll remember that for November I went with a koi fish theme, and oh my lord, I have loved this theme so much. Koi fish is a theme that I've wanted to do for ages, and I was so dang chuffed with how this one turned out. Koi fish were actually a lot easier to draw than I thought they were going to be, and I appreciated you guys leaving feedback on that video, saying that you liked having the little tutorials in the monthly plan with me. So following that, I do have a few more of those for you today too. Flipping through these pages though, you can see that I've still been using the Alistair method running task list for each week, rather than setting up more structured weeklies. And these are working really well for me, especially at this point of the year where there's a bunch to do, so having predetermined spaces for each day wouldn't really work. At the end here though, we have one final spread for the week coming, and then it's on to December. As we head into the time lapse now, just a reminder that any of the equipment I've used in this setup can be found linked in the description box below. For December I'm doing something a little different, and I'm not actually starting with a quote page. On this spread I've instead got my cover page on the left, and I'm going to have a decorative page on the right. Originally I was going to make that decorative page a quote page and have the quote across the middle, but I didn't want to hide any of the decorative elements because I thought they were really cute. As you can probably tell from the decorations that we have on this page, my theme for the month coming is gingerbread, in particular gingerbread men. On this first page here though, I'm drawing in a gingerbread house. Something that I wanted to try for this month was, for my decorations, not using black outlines. Using black outlines is certainly my comfort zone, so this one was a little bit different. Instead, what I'm doing is using my Staedtler Tri Plus fine liners and outlining all of the elements of my decoration with the colours that I'm then going to colour them in with. So for instance, anything that I'm going to colour in red is outlined in red, anything that I'm going to colour in green is outlined with green. For any of the elements that I'm not going to colour in, or the parts that are going to be in white, I opted to outline these with a light grey pen, just so you could still see the edges of the object. I was tempted to just leave it as an outline, but I decided that I did want to add colour, so now I'm going in with my Tombow dual brush markers to fill everything in. Both of the images on the cover page that I'm currently working on, and on the decorative page on the right, were taken from Christmas colouring pages. You can find heaps of these online, and all I did was scale them to size on my computer and then trace them into my journal. Of course, tracing through paper that is 160 GSM isn't really that straightforward. You can't really see through the paper to be able to trace anything that's underneath it. So instead what I did was use a tracing trick that we've talked about previously. This involves taking the design or picture that you want to trace into your journal, flipping the page over, and then colouring in the back of the page with pencil. I normally like to draw an outline around where the image actually is, so I don't waste time putting pencil where I don't really need it. Once you've coloured in the back of the image though, you can then trim this picture to size, leaving a little bit of space extra so that you can washi tape it down into your journal. Don't worry, it won't be staying there for long. The washi tape just helps make sure that it doesn't move while you're doing your tracing. Otherwise it's going to be pretty hard to follow your pencil lines afterwards. Once your image is stuck where you want it, you then just have to go over any of the lines with your pencil. This will transfer the pencil that you have on the back of the page to your journal. Of course, you don't have to stick to the images it's given, you can leave parts out to make it simpler, or add in extra decorations to add your own personal touch. Make sure you keep track of which lines you have gone over though, because you don't want to miss any, but once you're finished, you can just pull the image up, and you'll have a traced replica of it on your page. I super love using this trick in my journal, especially with the thicker paper of the Archer and Olive, but it just makes for an easier way to do decoration, rather than trying to copy images into my journal and having them turn out a little misproportioned, or something like that. For the colouring pages that I traced into my journal for this setup, I do have those linked in the description box, so make sure that you check out the originals. To add some extra detail to the front of my gingerbread house, I just went and drew in this scalloped pattern over the top with the Staedtler Tri Plus fine liner. I just thought this added a nice touch without making the decoration too busy. Well, too much more busy than it already is. With the decoration mostly finished though, it's then time to go and add in the title. And for all of the headers in this setup, I just used a simple bounce letter cursive. I say simple, but bounce lettering is not one of my strong suits, so this actually took me quite a while. I think that bounce lettering is one of those skills that I'm gonna have to commit a fair bit of time towards practicing it, and it's certainly a skill that I hope to develop more in the new year. I'd be curious to know though, what are some skills that you guys are looking to develop next year? Along with bounce lettering, I'd also like to get better at freehand doodling, and I'm intending on putting together a doodle challenge for that next year. But more about that in a later video. In terms of the timing for the cover page, from first touch of the pen to final erasings, this one came in at about 53 minutes. That time though doesn't include idea generation time, the sketching in time, and also doesn't include the sticking of the Kraft paper at the top, which by itself probably took about 3 minutes. So in terms of the full amount of time, the cover page certainly took longer than an hour. Not necessarily a quick setup, but I am really pleased with how it turned out. Onto the right hand page though, and here we are putting in some decoration. This one again is a colouring page, which you can find linked in the description box, but this one just has a range of Christmas cookies. So we of course have our gingerbread men, we have some candy cane cookies, some star cookies, some snowflake cookies, and some Christmas trees. I used the same process for drawing these ones in as well, so first tracing using our tracing trick, then going in with the Staedtler Tri-Plus fineliners to do all of the outlines, and the Tombow dual brush markers to fill them in. Because I knew I wanted a fair bit of decoration with the doodles that I was putting into this setup, I wanted to make sure that I kept my colour palette a bit more simple. So for this one, I'm just using one shade of brown, one shade of red, one shade of green, and one shade of yellow. The numbers for the Tombows that I used can be found in the description as well. When it came to colouring in the cookies though, I wanted to make sure that any neighbouring cookies were easy to differentiate. So on the side of any cookie, I went over a couple of times with the brown Tombow to darken it up. This just meant, for instance, where my tree cookies meet my gingerbread men, you can actually tell the difference between which part is the tree cookie and which part is the gingerbread man. I've never actually made gingerbread cookies before, gingerbread men or otherwise, but this theme has got me very in the mood to do that. While gingerbread men do hold a special place in my heart, they're actually not my favourite Christmas treat. Those would have to be Pfeffernusse biscuits, or Pfeffernusse cookies. They're so damn delicious, oh my god. I bought a bag of them on Wednesday, and by Friday they were already gone. So, I'm gonna have to get another one. This page was another lengthy one to set up, but again, I am super pleased with how it turned out. In terms of timing, from first touch of the pen to final erasings, our decoration page took about 58 minutes. But again, this doesn't include sketching in time, so a little bit longer. Flipping over though, and we are onto the monthly log, for which I am again using a calendar style layout. For the calendar grid on this spread, and for the boxes that I have in some of the upcoming pages, I decided to decorate the edge of these with a candy cane pattern. This involved first going in with that light grey fine liner to draw the edges of the border, and then putting red diagonal lines in the whole way around to mark out where the candy stripes would be. I also put red lines along the edges for any of the stripes that were going to be coloured in red with the Tombow. This essentially made it easier to make sure that I didn't put colour where it shouldn't be, or colour outside where I wanted the stripes. Kind of like lip liner, so the red fine lining is there to give a smoother finish to those candy stripes, and the grey is there to differentiate between the border of the calendar and the rest of the spread. I will say that this border style did certainly add to the time taken in each of the layouts, so the monthly log here took about an hour and 10 minutes to set up. Again though, this doesn't include the penciling in time or the sticking in of the Kraft paper, and this layout certainly did take the longest of the pages in this setup. Once the border was done though, I then added in the calendar grid using my black pen. Each calendar box in this layout was 6 squares across by 6 squares down, which is the typical size that I like to use. Something that I used to tie the decoration style of this page to that of the cover spread was the little stars and circles in the background. Those repeated elements, along with the similar style of page headings and the consistent colour palette, helped to tie all of the layouts of this setup together and make them look cohesive despite the differences in the styles of doodles that I used. Having all my layouts for the month look as though they actually belong together, at least where my monthly pages and trackers are concerned, is something that I really value. I know that I'm much more likely to use the layouts if they all tie together well. and having these repeated elements helps to achieve that. For the initials for each day of the week, I wanted to add in some more decorative elements. So I added in some simple Christmas related doodles, which I then put the initials over the top of. I learnt from last month that contrast is very important, so I decided to go with bold black letters, which should show up easily over all of the colours of the decorations. Last month, you may recall, I tried to use gold over green, and the value of those colours, or the lightness/darkness, was too evenly matched, so it didn't really show up very well, and I had to go in and think of a creative fix. As a side note, as you can tell, I have of course gone with a quite Christmas-centric theme in this setup, but I do have my December theme ideas video, which has over 120 theme ideas, both Christmas related and otherwise, that might be helpful for anyone that was still trying to figure out what theme they might want to tackle for the month ahead. That one, along with any other related videos, are linked in the description box below. With the headers and the calendar box done though, it was then onto the decorative panel down the right hand side. In here we're bringing back our gingerbread men. We have 3 of them, who I guess kind of look like they're playing hide and seek or something. As these guys are the main feature of this setup, I figured it would be suitable to have another mini tutorial on how to draw gingerbread men. They're fairly straightforward, but it might take a little bit of practice to get the proportioning the way you want it. So we start with a circle for the head of the gingerbread man, and for the style that I'm using, the circle should be roughly about 1/3 of the complete vertical length of our gingerbread man. You can see that I didn't completely close the bottom of the circle off, because this is going to lead straight into the arms. My gingerbread people don't have necks. It's kind of hard to describe the body shape, but you can kind of think of it as 4 rounded rectangles that meet at the base of your gingerbread man's head. Hopefully you can see what I mean from the visuals here, but play around with different lengths and widths for those arms and legs until you find the proportions that fit your style. Once you have your outline done, you can then add details in, like some buttons, the little stripes around the wrists and ankles, and of course, the face. I found that placing the eyes about halfway down the head worked well to make my gingerbread men look pretty cute. Then it's time to apply the pen. Just like I've done for all the decorations in my setup, I used the combination of the coloured fine liners and the brush markers. But I wanted to make the eyes of our gingerbread man stand out, so for this I used black with a white highlight. This just involves drawing a small circle inside each of the eyes in the same place, and then colouring the whole eye apart from that circle. This is just a quick tutorial of a simple style for the gingerbread man, but you can play around with different poses and positions just by changing the length or shape or direction of the arms and legs. And you can also add other accessories to your gingerbread men, like scarves, hats, that kind of stuff. In the interest of having another Christmas doodle to draw with your gingerbread man, I figured we'd also include a mini tutorial on how to draw a candy cane. This one's even more simple than the gingerbread man. You effectively just start with an upside down J shape, which you then effectively turn into a rounded block letter J by adding an additional line to one side of this. Once you have your candy cane outlined, you then just have to add in your stripes. So just by drawing lines from the outer edge of the candy cane to the inner edge. Because I'm going with red and white candy canes, I decided to outline this with a grey fine liner, just so that you can actually see the white parts of the candy cane compared to the rest of the book, and then added the stripes in with the red fine liner. I then sectioned off any of those stripes that were going to be coloured in with red by going over the grey outline between 2 of those red lines. Then we just need to colour those stripes in with the red marker. So 2 super easy Christmas doodles for you. Back to our monthly log though, where all of the fine lining has been done and it's just time to fill in the colour. This is another spread from this setup that I'm just so happy with how it turned out. I mean, if I'm honest, I'm actually happy with all of the spreads and how they turned out. It's kind of nice when that happens in a month, where everything kind of just feels like it went right. Doesn't happen often, there's usually one layout or spread that I'm not as content with, but all of these ones I really like. What a nice way to finish off a journal. With the monthly log done though, it is over the page and onto our trackers, first of which is my habit tracker. This one is going to have the same candy stripe border that was used on the monthly log, so with red and white stripes. To help get all of my stripes look consistent, I used the dot grid of my journal to help space them. so drawing a line from one of the dots diagonally to the next one down. You'll also have seen that for each of the pages in the setup, I had already gone in before filming and attached the craft paper for the headers. This was mainly because it takes a little bit to fully dry, so I didn't want to have to wait for that to happen during my setup. While I did consider using my dot grid craft paper from the Archer and Olive Neapolitan notepad for these headers, I decided in the end that the dot grid wasn't super necessary. So I instead used this eco packing tape that I picked up from the Wellington Food Show last year. Don't ask me why they're selling packing tape at a food show, because I have literally no idea, but I do find it to be a useful addition when setting up layouts where I want to use craft paper in them. The way the packing tape works though is that it is water activated. So on one side of the tape it has an adhesive that when you brush with water activates, and then you can stick it down. So for me, sticking into my journal. To make the banners though, I just cut a strip of tape that was long enough to go across the full spread, and then ripped the tape lengthways to make a textured edge. I then folded the tape piece in half to make a crease that would sit nicely along the spine of my journal. Having that crease pre-made means that when I stick the tape into my journal, it's less likely to buckle or pull on the paper, either because I have too much tape down or not enough. As I said though, this one is water activated, so when I had it lined up where I wanted it to be, I just brushed the back of the tape with my water brush and then stuck it down to the page, making sure to line that crease up carefully with the fold in my spread. I had some excess of the tape hanging over the edge of my journal, so I just cut the majority of it away with scissors and then used my corner rounder to, as can be expected, round the corners. Back to the habit tracker though, as you can see for the month coming I'm going with the vertical style. This one's fairly simple to set up and realistically only took as long as it did because of the candy stripe border, but from first touch of the pen to final erasings, this page came in at about 30 minutes. Again, that doesn't include the time to attach the craft paper header, so probably closer to 33. At this stage I haven't decided on what my habits for December are going to be, so after putting in the page header, the habit tracker was finished and it was on to my social media scheduler. I'm kind of tempted to rename this one. It's not so much just a scheduler anymore, it's more like a checklist of the things that I have to do for the video content that I'm putting out. You may notice though that for this month, my social media page is looking a little bit different, and this is because the content that I'm putting out is going to be a little different. While last year I did a 12 Days of Christmas series, where I set up 12 Christmas related layouts in my bullet journal, which if you haven't seen, I've got the playlist in the description box below, but this year I've decided instead that I'm going to do Vlogmas again. I actually did Vlogmas for the first time back in 2019, which is actually the reason I started vlogging in general, and why we now have the JashiiCorrin Vlogs YouTube channel. If you want to be sure not to miss my Vlogmas content, be sure to jump over to that channel and give it a subscribe. Soon we're also going to be celebrating reaching 1,000 subscribers over there with a 1k giveaway. Okay, to clarify, that's not a giveaway for 1k, I'm not made of money, but it will still be a fun giveaway all the same and something you won't want to miss. I was actually thinking that it might be useful to do an updated video on how my content scheduler works, just because it has changed a bit since the last time I made a video about it. If this is something that you guys would be keen to see, please do let me know in the comments. This one though took about 20 minutes to set up, so less time than the habit tracker because I didn't need to rule in a grid, but with that one finished it was then over the page and onto my meal log. While I've enjoyed tracking my dinners for the past couple months, I thought that for December it might be useful to also track my lunches. Lunch is a meal that I honestly get really uninspired about, and I'm thinking that, well, I'm hoping that tracking my lunches in December might make me a little more inclined to do things that are a little bit more creative with my lunches, rather than just eating the same stuff all the time. On this one I am again using that candy stripe border, but instead of doing red like we had on the monthly log in the habit tracker, I instead went for a green stripe like we had on the content page. This meal log is super simple though, it's just split into 2 columns with a row for each day of the month. So lunch in the left hand column and dinner on the right. This one was another layout that didn't take very long, so coming in at 19 minutes from first touch of the pen. On the right hand side of this spread though, I decided that I wanted to put in a space for a monthly to-do list, so similar to the one that I had back in October. To make it a little bit more visually appealing though, I did want to put in a decorative border with some more Christmas doodles. These were again from a colouring page, and I put them into my journal using that same tracing trick. As we talked about before, this is a very Christmassy theme. And question of the day for you guys, do you celebrate Christmas? Or is there another holiday that you celebrate around this time of year? We are a diverse community, and I'd be interested to know what things you guys are celebrating. Birthdays included. In terms of timing for this one, our to-do list came in at the shortest amount of time for this setup, so 12 minutes from first touch of the pen. But again, this doesn't include sketching in and doesn't include idea generation time. It's now time for the final flip through though. So we have the cover page and decorative page, both featuring decorations from colouring pages, the calendar style monthly log with our Christmas doodles and hide and seek gingerbread men, the vertical habit tracker and content scheduler / social media checklist page, my meal log for lunches and dinners, and my monthly to-do list. And after this, there's actually only 3 blank spreads left in this journal, which I have no idea how I'm gonna fit the rest of my checklists in. I might need to use some tip-ins, but that's later me's problem. As I said before, I am so super chuffed with how all of the layouts in this setup turned out, and I hope that you guys liked them too. If you found today's video helpful or interesting or just enjoyed watching, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you hadn't already and felt so inclined, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more on planning, productivity, and personal development. And until next time, team, bye!